my right hand went straight into my ice axe. It went straight through both of my gloves and straight into my hand. Probably about as far into my hand as it could have gone without going all the way through. And at that moment, I just thought, fuck. And that's pretty much all I said. It was fuck, fuck, fuck. Because I know I fucked up. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Optimize Me Now podcast. This is episode 87, and I'm your host, Jamie Keeling, business and personal performance strategist, and the founder of the Bulletproof app, which is designed from the ground up to give you all the tools and support you need to accelerate your business performance. Download it now for free and get stuck straight into the awesome content and business tools. It's available on both Apple and Android devices. You're looking for the golden bee in the bullet hole, and pop me a message when you're in to unlock even more free support. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast now if you haven't already. Leave a review if you're feeling particularly generous, and share this episode with your friends, family, and anyone else who it might help. That's it about me. Let's introduce today's special guest. Well, today's a little bit different because today my special guest is me. And seeing as I've just introduced myself and the show, no further introduction is required. This is a bit different to the usual format of this podcast. As you all know, my podcast is, generally speaking, an interview platform. So I have interesting guests on who've had interesting or inspiring stories, or who are experts in their field, to talk about who they are and what they do and help you develop, learn and grow. It's been a long time since I did a standalone podcast where it was just me. This time there is no one on the other end of the video phone. There is no one for me to ask questions for and for whom I can just let talk and basically take the show. It's all on me. It's been a long time, as I said, since I did one of these shows in this format. The last one was probably over 2 years ago, when I first started the show. And I was talking about kind of hints, tips and tricks and various different things, from managing your money to business and personal performance and all that kind of stuff. Today's going to be a little bit different again, in that I'm talking about an experience I had in the mountains. And it was probably my most favorite day out in the mountains yet, since I started going up with my brother from another mother, Mr. Kevin Benison, who you'll know has been on the show many times. We started going up. He invited me out on the mountains. We went up Snowdon on the 2nd of January 2019. So it's been about a year and a half now that I've been kind of getting out hiking and going up the mountains of Wales, England, and now Scotland. And my experiences in the mountains really culminated in the experience I had earlier in March. And it was just before the coronavirus hit and lockdown. In fact, I remember I'd been to have a 2-day client session with one of my clients up in Scotland, near Loch Lomond. And seeing as I was up there, I wanted to make the most of the winter conditions. I was hoping for some snow, some ice, all things winter. And I decided I was going to stay up there for an extra day and drive up to Ben Nevis, up to the Ben Nevis range. And the plan for the day was, so I did my 2 days with my client. I drove up then that night to Fort William and stayed the night in a hotel there. And I remember driving up that night. I left my clients at about 6 p.m. It's quite a drive up to where my client is from me here in Wales. Never mind from my clients then up to Fort William. It took me a good 4 or 5 hours. And I remember the road was closed on the way up. So it was about 8:30 at night. And I was not too far, actually. I think I was probably about 20 minutes away from the hotel that I was staying in that night. And everything came to a stop outside this service station. And I was pretty close to the front of where the roadworks had started. And it was roadworks. And I just remember, because the guy came back and said, oh, no, the road's closed till 9 o'clock, but it should reopen at 9 o'clock because they're doing some resurfacing. And I just remember looking on my sat-nav, because usually there's a way around, you can kind of double back on yourself and there'll be another road or another route to get to where you need to go that isn't too much further out of the way. But I just remember looking at the maps that night and thinking, man, if I had any other way to get to where I want to go to here is fucking miles out of my way, and it would have taken me hours and hours and hours to go a different route, and I'm not even sure I could have gone a different route. It's that sparse up there. It just gives you a feel for how little civilization there really is up in those areas and how wild it can be. So I decided to wait, and I just kind of sat, spoke to my fiance, caught up with her, and then luckily enough the road did reopen at 9 o'clock, and so I was on my way. I'd booked the hotel there whilst I was sat in the traffic, actually, because I'm a bit of a lastminute.com kind of guy when it comes to hotels. And I got up to the hotel just in time for check-in. So I got there about 9:30, I think it was in the end. Still had to get my food and supplies for the next day, which I decided to do in the morning, not that night, because the supermarket there was closing quite soon and I didn't want to miss it. So I just bedded in for the night. I remember there was a bit of snow coming down and it was cold and it was looking a bit wintry up there already anyway. There'd been a little bit of snow. And then I woke up in the morning. So I had a decent night's sleep. Woke up in the morning and it was like winter wonderland. It was crazy. It was like being in the Arctic Circle. Like the car park, the cars, there was about 4 inches of snow on my car that had fallen overnight. The car park was literally just a sheet of snow slab. And looking out, I did a Facebook Live that morning when I got down to my car after I checked out. And just looking out onto the loch there, it was just so beautiful. It was so amazing. And I'm stood there in this snow and thinking, wow, like I couldn't have wished for better winter conditions to go up. But at the same time appreciating, well, hey, shit, this just got real, because now it is definitely going to be wintry up there. If it's like this down here, pretty much near sea level, then what's it going to be like up at 1,400 meters or 4,000 feet, 4,500 feet, because that was the target of where I was going that day. And so I remember being extremely excited and extremely apprehensive at the same time. And the day, to frame this story, the day didn't turn out as expected. There was a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Tumultuous twist at the end. I didn't make my target route in the end because of the weather, and something quite extreme happened to me on the way down, which is the main reason for coming on and doing this episode about this, because I want to talk about that experience and my thought processes as I was heading up the mountain through the terrible weather, and how I dealt with that, and kind of the mindset that I employed to get through that, and to the kind of decision-making process that I made. And then what happened when I had to turn back on my route because of the weather, because I didn't hit my milestone, when certain things failed on me and potentially affected my ability to find the route back down. And then the accident that I had at around 800 meters on the way down, and how I got through that, how I patched myself up, how I got down off the mountain, and then what happened when I got myself to A&E. So it's a really interesting story, but what I want to go through and what I want you to take away from this is, how was I thinking? What was my mindset? How did I make my decisions? And the reason for that is that anybody who goes out in the mountains will love this episode, because it's a pure mountaineering story. Now, not to say I'm like any of the those greats who've been up Everest and K2 and all those massive mountains, but it's a mountaineering story at heart, in so many ways. And the lessons I learned up the Ben Nevis range that day are not only applicable to all mountaineering journeys, wherever you go, however high you go, but also I think to life in general. How we make decisions in everyday life, how we make decisions when our backs are up against the wall, and how we make decisions in business as well. So I think, if you're into the mountains, you're going to love this episode. because there's loads of stuff in here for you. This is going to be like mountain porn for you. But if you're not someone who gets up the mountains and you have a business, or you're self-employed, or you're someone who competes in sports, or you're just someone who, as we all do from time to time, go through from some challenging and emotional experiences, then I think there's going to be a lot of takeaways in this for all of you. I'm hoping that you'll all get a lot of value out of this, because it was a really intense experience for me. And despite the accident I had at the top and all the things that happened that day and the weather on the way up, it is without a doubt my favourite day out on the mountains. So let's crack on with the story. So it's a bit of a frame as well, just to let you know where I've been and what I've done mountain-wise. I've been up all of the 15 3,000 foot pluses in Wales. Most of those I've done with my brother from another mother, Mr. Kevin Benison, and had a fucking amazing time doing all those. Haven't really been up any of those in any wintry conditions. It's been a bit pish, a bit rainy, a bit windy. When I say a bit, pretty windy. I mean, I remember when we went up Pinafan, it was very fucking rainy and windy and cold, and we had to keep moving, and it was a tough day for me. It was a tough day for me getting up there, because Kevin likes to put the pace on, and but we got up, and we were soaked through, and absolutely soaked through. Even our pants were sogging by the time we got back down, despite all the waterproofs we were wearing. But never have I been up in full winter conditions. And then more recently, Kevin and I have been up a couple in the Lake District. Kevin's done tons more walking than me. I've got a bunch of kids and family and business commitments and stuff, so it makes it harder to get out, especially when there's overnights involved. But Kevin and I have been, he's taken me up, we've been up Helvellyn in the Lake District, we've done Pavey Ark, Jack's Rake. That's a bloody nice scramble up Jack's Rake. They're the only two that I've done in the Lake District. So when we did Helvellyn, we did Striding Edge and Swirl Edge. So we went down Swirl Edge and then came round and back up Striding Edge, and that was a really tough day out for me. Again, lots of lessons on that day as well. I really pushed hard that day, and I didn't keep my nutrition on point. I wasn't eating as much as I should have been and keeping my energy levels up, and relying a bit too much on those energy gels. And coming back up Striding Edge, and then that last scramble up to the top of Helvellyn again, it was a real challenge for me, that. And then coming down, I remember getting very lightheaded, had to sit down and stop, and just took on some sugar and a bit of caffeine, and luckily that gave me the boost that I needed. But we were coming down in the dark that day as well, because it had been a much longer day out than we'd first anticipated. So that was a key lesson to me in terms of nutrition. And I think that day in and of itself was a precursor to not really fucking things up when I went up the Ben Nevis range in March. Because that day was a stark lesson for me on the importance of taking little bits of food in, eating little and often, all the way up, all the way throughout the day. So keep those energy levels consistent and high, eating the right type of foods, and not relying too much on glucose, sugars, and things that are kind of quick hits when it comes to energy release. It was really driven home for me on that day out up Helvellyn, and we did Pavey Ark and Helvellyn in the day. And the experience I had on the way down, and that resulted in me being a lot more focused on my nutrition in following trips, and especially this trip up the Ben Nevis range. So having done all of that, and I've done several routes up Snowdon now as well, including Crib Goch. I did that the first time I did Crib Goch. I snuck out and did that on my own because I wanted to really test myself. I wanted to test. I mean, it was a beautiful day, so there was no adverse weather, so it was a really easy day out in that sense. But I wanted to test, can I push myself if I'm on my own? Because Kevin's a great person for me to drive the pace, and he pushes me, and it's great. I love going out in the mountains with Kev, but I wanted to know, can I do this myself? Who am I? Much like with my fighting, my taekwondo experiences, who am I when my back's up against the wall? Who am I when it really counts? Who am I when there's no one else to lean on? There's no one else pushing me on? How hard can I push myself? And I wanted to test my navigation. I'd never done, Kev always, when we go out, for the most part, he does all the navigating. He plans the routes. He's the one with the map. I have my own map and compass and stuff as well, just for good measure. But he's the one generally who does the navigation. So for me, it was about testing myself and making sure that if I ever did get separated from Kev, or if I did want to just go out on my own, then I would have the skills to be able to do that. And going up Crib Goch was an amazing experience, going along that ridge and all the scrambling. It's a fantastic scramble. But I did the Snowdon Horseshoe, so I went up Crib Goch, up to Snowdon, and then down the Watkin Path, and then up across Yerlwyd. And it was just a phenomenal day out, and it proved to me that, yeah, you know what, I can do this. In fair weather anyway, I can do this. And apart from going up my local hills, that's probably the only solo experience I've had. Been up Trivan a couple of times with Kev and with my mate Buff. And we had another interesting experience up Trivan when Buff and I went out. It was a bit of a slow trek up. By the time we got down, we always knew the weather was due to turn about lunchtime, and just wind and rain and generally getting a bit nasty. But we decided to push on. I wanted particularly to push on. I'd been out in some nasty weather before, and so we got up Trifan, got down the other side, and then we were gonna go up. I forget what the name of the scramble is there now. It will come back to me. But we were going to do the scramble, but we decided against that because the rain was starting to come down. And I've done that scramble before, up to Glidderfach, I think it is. And I know it's a tough scramble. So we decided to go just straight up the side, which we did. There was a bit of snow up there as well, which is great. It was the first time I got to actually use my ice axe. And we got up to the top, and the weather really did start to turn. It was pissing down with rain. It was windy as fuck. And the plan was we were going to go across Glidderfach, and we were going to go down the Gribbin Ridge. Gribbin. And I'd never been down Gribbin with the weather the way it was. It was very low visibility up there as well at that point. I didn't have the confidence, and I didn't think it was sensible to go down Gribbin, given that I'd not done it before, didn't know what the terrain was like. Obviously, I had an idea from the map and know it's a ridge and there's a bit of a scramble there, but didn't feel confident doing that in the weather conditions and not having the previous experience. So we made a bad call, to be honest with you. We went down. we kind of went down the backside of Glidderfach, that area there, and it was my own fault because I was responsible for navigation that day, and we were panicked a little bit and just wanting to get down. So weather was so bad. What we should have done was we should have just turned back and gone back the way we came, and we probably shouldn't have gone up that second hill in the first place, given that we knew the weather was turning and we could see it was turning. But we decided to, and when we were up there, we made another bad call in that we decided to just get down at any cost. And we got down and we were fine, but what happened was we went down completely the opposite side to where we'd come up. And so by the time we actually got down, it was a hell of a slog down in that weather as well. We got soaked, we were drenched, and we were absolutely fucked by the time we got back to the car. Well, I say back to the car. Back to the road. We saw the road, and we thought it was the A5, the same road that we'd parked on just built at the base of the north face of Trevan. And it wasn't. So I looked at the map, got our bearings when we got back to the road, and realised that we weren't on the A5. We were on one of the Feeder B roads, and we were like 5 kilometres from, what's the name of the place? Plasjebrennen. What is the name of that town? It will come to me, but you know what I mean. We were 5 kilometres from there, so we had a 5-click walk back to there, and we had then like another 10-12 clicks back to the car at the base of Trevan, and we were just like, fuck, that is a massive. And this was like 5 o'clock at night. In the evening, it was dark. We'd been out all day. We were fucked anyway from going up Trevan, up Glidderfach. And then the hike back down was torrential, And now we realise we've given ourselves like a 15, 16 kilometre hike across the road back to our car, which was devastating. And so we did the 5 clicks back to, we actually stopped at Plas y Brenin, the mountaineering centre there. I still can't remember the place of the name of the place there where that is. It'll come to me. It's on the tip of my tongue. And it was like, God, this was December, so this wasn't long before Christmas, and like everywhere was shutting down. They were having their Christmas party that night there, and like by some chance they managed to find one taxi in the area who could take us the last like 7 kilometers back to our car. Cost us 50 quid to go 7 clicks. So it was an expensive taxi ride, but at that point we were just like, we really don't care what this costs. We cannot walk. I mean, it would have taken hours, and we wouldn't have got back to the car till like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And I'm just not sure the way we felt we would have made it. We would have made it. We would have pushed it, but it would have been difficult, really difficult. So that was kind of another key lesson for me in route planning and navigation, and not making rash emotional decisions in hard times. And again, that experience framed and informed my ability to cope on my day out up in Scotland. So those were kind of 2 key days out for me that taught me some really stark lessons about the importance of nutrition up in the mountains, and the importance of being logical and double checking facts, and being really spot on with navigation when it comes to going out in the mountains. Because I really didn't want to give myself another 15 click walk back to the car after a grueling day out like that again. And so now we fast forward to March. So I got up that morning, as I said, it was white everywhere. It was just absolutely stunning. I was going out for the day on my own, and I was going out in extremely harsh winter conditions. Not only was there snow on the ground and ice and all things winter, but it was nasty weather as well. And it was windy, and it was rainy, and the gusts were significant. The wind strength was significant. However, I've been studying the mountain weather forecast for days, because the last time I'd been up in Scotland hoping to do this, I'd been weathered off. And all the charts, all the reports were saying that the weather was due to subside and ease off in the afternoon. So about midday, lunchtime, it was due to ease off. And so again, that really informed a lot of the decisions that I made that day. So I went to Morrison's, I got a bunch of supplies, had some food because I skipped breakfast at the hotel in favour of eating what I wanted to eat from the supermarket. As I say, this was, I can remember Corona was being talked about, and people were going on about it and saying it was a big thing, and it had already swept through Wuhan in China. So, you know, there's all the Corona stuff going on in the background here. Literally weeks before we got locked down. So it was amazing to get the experience in before we got locked down. But got my supplies, had something to eat, and then I drove to the North Face car park. And I got some new gear as well for the hike. A new Rab waterproof jacket, because the one that I was using was a Nevica one, relatively cheap one, and I'd managed to fuck the zip when I went up Trevan Buff. So I didn't fuck it, it just went. So I needed a new jacket, and I was looking forward to giving that a try. And so I got all my kit on in the car park, had a bit of food, got ready to go. It was raining, and got my ruck on, got everything prepped. I made sure I had my first aid kit, my food, got everything where it was accessible, because that's a big thing for me, is that if it's too inaccessible in the bag, I tend to be lazy and I'll not want to take the bag off to get in there, because I just want to make progress. So it's key for me to make sure my nutrition and water especially is nice and accessible. And check my route. and I set off about 9 o'clock. I think it was 9 o'clock by the time I'd got all my shit together. Maybe it was a bit early, 8:30, 9 o'clock, something like that. I remember taking a quick pre-walk photo at the sign in the North Faith car park, and then I got cracking and started walking through the forest. So there's a track that takes you up through the forest, up the first bit of incline up to about 400 meters. And it's getting snowier and snowier. There wasn't too much snow down at the bottom there, but I remember going up and it was raining, and so I had my hood up, and it was just like, this is a bit minging and a bit nasty. And then got up, and the path started getting snowy and slippy. So I had my crampons with me, ice axe, all the necessary equipment for the day. But it's worth mentioning, it was my first time really using an ice axe, and it was my first time using crampons. So it was quite ambitious, and there's probably people out there who would think stupid, and I should have maybe got some training, or I should have had some practice in less harsh conditions or more controlled conditions. And I would agree, it was probably a bit stupid, and I should have had some training first, but that's just how I roll. And I decided that, I'd done a lot of research. It's not like I was going up blind. I decided that what I was going to do, and had researched how to walk in crampons. I'd made sure that I'd fitted them to my boots before I left, even before I went to Scotland. I checked them again that day at the car before I left, so I had everything on point, and I knew the theory of what I was doing. It was just about putting that into practice. And so I'm going up this path through the forest, get out of the forest, and then get onto the path there, which is the path that runs along the river. Now, I'm going to bring up the OS maps quickly here as well while I'm talking, just so I can reference some of these place names, because, I'll be honest, my memory fails me. Oh, it's deleted my offline maps. Oh no, so here we go. Ben Nevis and Fort William. So yeah, it's the Almechin path or something. Hang on a minute. Torlundi. Yeah, so it's this pathway here. The Alt Dame. Molbeg. No, that's a different range. Carndig Madonna. There we go. That's the one. So there we go. Right, so it was the Alt Achmeulen. I can't say it because it's Scottish. Alt Achmeulen path. So it's the path that runs along the river, the stream there. So we come out of the forest and get onto that path. And at this point, it's really, really snowy and very wintry. It's raining. The weather is still bad, and just looking around there, I could barely see. I couldn't see Ben Nevis, which is straight in front of you looking south. Couldn't really see a lot high level because the visibility high up was shite. It was non-existent. But looking around down there, I could see some of the contours, some of the hills, and I mean, it was just a winter wonderland. It was just white. Everything was white. And I just remember thinking how beautiful it was, but also I'm being really excited and at the same time really apprehensive about what I'm about to embark on, because I've never been out in these conditions before. Coffee gone. So I'm walking along, and as I come onto that path, there's some mountain training vans there. So there are some people out there already, and I could see this group out some way ahead of me. And I was thinking, I wonder what route they're going. So my route for the day was I wanted to do the Carnmore Arête, the CMD Arête route up to Ben Nevis. So most people who do Ben Nevis will do the mountain track, and that is the track that these guys were doing. I wasn't sure if they were going to be doing the CMD, but I figured that probably due to the weather conditions, they probably wouldn't. I didn't know if they were out training people or if they were just out for a day in some harsh conditions. I didn't end up catching up with them or seeing them. But they followed that path all the way to the CIC hut, and Now, I don't know from there whether they continued to the mountain path to go up that way, or whether they did one of the ridge or ledge routes and did something more technical. But anyway, I lost sight of them as they approached the CIC hut where you make the turn, and I'm kind of trudging along there and keeping a good eye on the weather and looking for my exit, because at this point I'm looking for where I need to get off this path now and travel the route less trodden and head up Carn Berg Derag. So that's really the first summit that I was looking to hit, and then from there to walk along the ridge line to Carn Derg Madonach, and from there over to Carn Mor Derag, and then from there I wanted to drop down onto the CMD Arête, take the Arête in, which would be in full winter conditions at this point, all the way along, and it's a big long ridge, all the way along to Ben Nevis, and then up the final hike to the Ben Nevis summit. Then from there I was going to take the mountain track back down around, and then pick up the path that led back to the CIC hut and take me back to the North Face car park. So I left the path a little bit later than I'd originally planned, which meant that my ascent was a tad steeper than it would have otherwise been, and I started making my way up the mountain. So this is making my way up the Carn Berg Derg now. That's a summit of 1,010 meters. So just about, about 40-50 meters shy of the Snowdon summit. So it's pretty tall. And this was where really a lot of my decision making was made. So very early on, I decided that I had one rule, and that was if I wasn't at the summit of, or couldn't be at the summit of Ben Nevis by 2 p.m. that afternoon, then I would turn back wherever I was at 2 p.m. So that was my one rule, and this is something that you'll hear a lot about in mountaineering, is the turnaround rule, the turnaround time. Because I knew that if I wasn't across the Arête and had a good chance of getting up to the summit of Ben Nevis by 2:30 p.m, I was going to be coming down that mountain potentially in very nasty conditions in terms of lots of snow, lots of ice, not a route that I was familiar with, not been up there before, and in the dark. Now I had my head torch and all the equipment I needed, but I still didn't want to be stuck up there at night time, because that could have been potentially disastrous. So my number one rule was, if I get to a point where I realise I cannot get to the Ben Nevis summit by 2 p.m. or 2:30 p.m. latest, I'm turning around. So that was rule number one. Then my second consideration was the weather. So I'm heading up Carn Berg Derag, and as I'm heading up, it was a really, really tough slog. It's really, really steep, and I'm not the fittest guy out there. You know, I'm fitter. I'm relatively fit, but as Kevin will attest, I'm often the one lagging behind, staring at his arse, and huffing and puffing. But I know how to push myself, and I'm kind of pushing up. But the weather that day made it really, really slow going. There were several points where, even before I was up at 600 meters, around 600 meters, 650 meters, I was having to stop and brace myself into the hill to stop from being blown away. So it gives you an idea for the ferocity of the wind that day. And it wasn't just the wind, you know, it was picking up a lot of the snow, which was icy as hell. And it was flinging this snow at me through the air. My beard, there's pictures on my Facebook if you want to go and check it out. My beard was covered in ice crystals. It was cold. My hands were freezing. There were several points where I was kind of walking with my fingertips in my armpits to try and get some feeling back into them, because it was just they were painful. It was painful. You know, there was a real risk that I could have got frostbite. But luckily, I mean, this is in two gloves as well. So I had a liner glove on, and then a thicker outer glove, which was waterproof and much more insulated. And even with both of those pairs of gloves on, my fingers were freezing, literally freezing off. And then the wind was like just pushing me around, and it was so strong. I think the gusts that day were somewhere between 50 and 70 kilometers per hour. So harsh, really harsh. Most people would not have even thought to attempt that route in that weather because it was a bit stupid. I'll be the first to admit that. Would I do it again? I would, if I'm honest, because I made the decisions from a place of logic. If I ever felt that the wind was getting stronger than that, and it was in danger of literally knocking me off my feet, then I would have turned around. But I was confident and constantly reassessing this, not getting emotional about it, but logically reassessing it and stopping and bracing and saying, right, how strong is this? Is this likely to push me off my feet here? And although it was strong and I was having to stop semi-regularly, I wasn't concerned about being blown off the mountain. Now, that in and of itself, if you lose your footing in conditions like that, there's a real risk that if you start sliding, you're not going to stop because it is slippy as fuck. It's snow. People ski on this stuff. So if I was to lose my footing and then go sliding down on my arse, that's why we carry the ice axe, so that we can use it to self-arrest and brace. But I didn't want to be put in a position where I would get blown off my feet and put into that situation because it was windy. And it's one thing slipping over or tripping on something, but to be blown off your feet and blown down the mountain is quite something else. So I didn't want to be in that position. The other consideration was the visibility. As I got up to kind of 700, 750, 800 meters, the visibility was decreasing rapidly to the point where I could just about still see the river and the path that I'd left. And so my thought process was, okay, right now, even if visibility drops to zero, I know that I turn around and I head back down that way. So I know what bearing to head on to get back down off this mountain, and it is literally as simple as turning around and pretty much going in a straight line back to the path. And there was a real debate in my mind at this point as to whether or not I should continue. And I remember stopping several times and really thinking about this. And my thought process was balancing my fear and my anxiety with the cold, hard facts of the situation. And it was this battle in my mind. Because the fear was, I'm going to get blown off. It's going to white out. I'm going to get lost. I'm going to freeze to death up here. I'm going to die. But that wasn't helpful. Now I say it wasn't helpful. It's not helpful to let that drive the decisions. It's something that's helpful to be aware of, because I don't want to die. I don't want to freeze to death on the side of a mountain. You've got to be aware of the risks. You've got to be aware of the risks, and you've got to know what the likelihood is that those risks could actually happen, right? So yes, I could have got lost. I could have frozen on the side of the mountain, but thinking logically then, so I'm aware of these strong emotions of fear and anxiety, but I'm then balancing that with, okay, yes, I might die up here. Yes, I might get lost. Yes, I might freeze to death. Yes, the wind might blow me off. What's the likelihood of that actually happening? So I then start visualizing and running through different situations, different circumstances. Okay, so if this happens, what would I do? If visibility drops to zero, what would I do? So before it's happened, right? And this is a key thing that's transferable into every aspect of life and business, is running through what may be in your mind and having a plan of action, knowing exactly how you're going to react before you get there. Because when you get there, if you don't have a plan and you're going in blind and all of a sudden a situation smacks you in the fucking face, it's too late. And if you don't have a plan, then you're much more likely to be taken aback by it and to make emotional decisions that don't serve you. And that is what happened to me up Trevan with Buff, is that we didn't have a plan for if we got up to the top, what do we do if the weather's too bad to continue? And we made a rash decision. We came down the wrong way. So I wasn't going to do that again. So I was thinking, right, okay. And I remember stopping for a good while and kind of taking stock, feeling myself, feeling my strength, feeling the weather, feeling the wind, feeling the silt, the hail on my face, feeling the power of the wind driving me across the mountain, looking around me. What can I see? If this happens, if I lose visibility, what do I do? If I get blown off my feet, what do I do? So my thought process was, right, okay, if I get blown off my feet, I self-arrest and I turn around. Period. Because if it happens once, it can happen again, especially as I get higher up the mountain. The wind gets more ferocious, the conditions get more severe, and I get further away from safety. So I was like, right, get blown off my feet, self-arrest, recover, get down. Period. So I've got my plan. What happens if visibility drops to absolute zero? Okay, well, if visibility drops to absolute zero, I know what my bearing is to get back to the path, and it is literally a straight line. Now, this is different if I get up to the top of Cairnberg Derag, and then I have to make another decision, right? Because from there, it is literally a straight line down off the mountain. However, if I'd come across then to Cairnderg Madonach or Cairn Mór Derag, and the conditions are terrible at that point, it's not just a straight line down. At that point then I've got to navigate across this ridge. There are cornices up there as well which could give way at any minute, so get too close to them and I go sliding down the other side of the mountain, which is extremely steep, and then I've got to navigate multiple bearings in order to get back. I mean, it's pretty much a straight line, but there's more to getting back and getting down then, and getting back to where I need to be. But at this point, I'm up the side of Cairnberg Derg, and I'm about, as I said, 800 meters. The weather's terrible, but I know from the weather forecast, and I check again, that it's due to ease at around midday, 1 o'clock. And I'm like, right, okay. So I'm at this point, I know it's a straight line back down. I know what I'm going to do if adverse conditions or situations hit me. I've got a plan. I've been there, and I'm confident in my ability to navigate those situations with my plan. So I decided to carry on. At around 850 meters, 800 meters, I think it was 800, 850. There were some really hard patches of ice, and so I'm constantly assessing the terrain. And whereas it had been snowy, deep snow, but snowy up to that point, now it's getting icy. So there are it's not snow anymore. There are sheets of ice. You literally cannot walk on this stuff in boots, because to try and do that, I would have gone flying. I would literally have slipped on my ass and gone flying down the mountain. So it was at that point, it was obvious to me that I had to get the crampons on. So this is the first time now I've got my crampons on in these kind of conditions. And so I fixed them on. I put an extra layer on. So I've got my down jacket underneath my waterproof now. Get my, because it's getting colder, get my crampons on. My ice axe is there as well. And now I'm starting the really wintry part, the real winter conditions of the mountain. And actually at this point, I'm starting to feel a bit more confident because the crampons gave me a lot more purchase in the ground. It was actually easier walking along the ice in the crampons than it was trying to trudge through the snow. And so now I'm about 850 meters. I'm heading up. The weather's still pretty windy, but not as windy as it was. So the wind is now starting to die down. And remember, I'm constantly assessing this, because if it starts to pick up, then it's like, it ain't worth it. I'm turning around. And I'm getting up now. And as the slope starts to shallow a little bit more, between 900 and 1,000 meters, I can see these big fields of snow. So there's another thing here that I'm aware that there's been a lot of snow overnight, and I'm aware that there is potential for avalanche. Now, if you're not familiar with these conditions and mountaineering in these conditions, you might think avalanches are just for the Alps or for Everest. Well, it's not. Avalanches happen in the Scottish Highlands all the time. They happen wherever there is snow at certain pitches and in certain conditions. So again, I'm now making another decision of, well, okay, really my route I want to. So I decided I was going to avoid I wasn't going to hit the summit of Carnberg Derag because of where I'd headed up. I would have had to have gone back and then basically walked back on myself. And I knew that this has already taken me hours to get up to this point. And it's approaching midday when the weather conditions are supposed to be easing off. So I decided to skirt around the side of this snowfield. So I'm walking now on the ice between, you can see these rocks poking through like a rock field. So rocks poking up through the ice and snow. And then there's just this solid snowfield. So I'm like, well, if I walk straight across that, which is where I ideally want to go to shorten the route, then there's a possibility it could avalanche. There's a possibility the snow could start moving underneath me and carry me down the mountain, bury me and all this. And again, like that could have happened. It may not have happened. It may have been extremely unlikely on that particular slope on that particular day. But there was a potential risk there that it was easy enough by lengthening my route very slightly to avoid. So I decided to avoid it. It was not worth the risk because if it had have happened, the consequences could have been fatal. And again, I'm on my own, so there's no one to come and rescue me. And I didn't want to do anything to endanger myself, but also there was a consideration of not wanting to do anything to put anybody else in danger who may have came out, any mountain rescue MRT team who would have had to come out and rescue me. So I went around these snowfields, several of them, and got up to the top where there's the ridge that runs along then to Carnberg Madonach. So I avoided the Carnberg Derag summit and headed straight up to the ridge, about halfway between the two summits, and then made my way, this was about 1,000 meters up now, made my way across to Carnberg Madonach. Headed up there, and again, this was relatively easy going. The weather had eased off. There was still some wind, but I'm making sure I'm getting my nutrition in as well. I'm having my trail mix and various different other bits and pieces to keep my energy levels up. I was drinking plenty of water, so my nutrition was on point. I was knackered, and it was fucking tough. And my legs are starting. I'm really feeling it in my muscles at this point. So my adductors on the inside of my thighs were aching. My quads were aching. I was feeling it, so I was moving relatively slowly at this point because I'd already had a very tough day. But I headed on across, basically followed the ridgeline, stayed well away from the cornice, which had formed up there because I didn't want to go sliding down that side of the mountain. And the weather was improving. It was definitely a lot more manageable. And at this point, I'm feeling confident in my ability to traverse the route. I had my doubts at this point as to whether I was actually going to make the full horseshoe, whether I was going to get up to Ben Nevis. But again, at this point, it was around midday, 1 o'clock, and I'm like, well, if I don't get across the Arête by 1:30, 2 o'clock, then I'm going to be turning around because I'm not going to get up. I'm not going to hit my turnaround time. So at this point, I'd not made the final decision. I was going to make that when I hit either Carnberg Madonach or Carnmore Derag. I wasn't even sure I was going to make Carnmore Derag, the way I was feeling, how knackered I was at this point. But I think I knew in my heart of hearts that I wasn't going to make Ben Nevis. So I went across. I got up to the summit of Carnberg Madonach, which is a summit of 1,179 meters. That was great to hit that because that was the first. I'm not even sure that is a Munro. No, it's not a Munro. But again, that's the highest I've ever been. The highest previously was Snowdon. So now I was up at 1,179 meters, the highest I'd ever been in the world, apart from in a plane, obviously. And so that was really cool. Spent a couple of minutes at the summit there, and at this point it's 1:45. So at this point I'm like, well, do you know what? I'm fucked, and I'm not going to make it. I'm not even going to get across the ridge before 4 o'clock at this rate. And I would have been up on the summit of Ben Nevis in the dark, and I just wasn't prepared to do that. It would have been too dangerous. So I'd made the decision at this point, the sensible decision, that I was going to turn around. I wasn't going to succeed in completing my route. But I'd already had such a challenging day, such a phenomenal day up to this point, that I was gutted to not be able to do the Arête, because that was really the main reason I'd gone up. Not even Ben Nevis. I wanted to do the Arête. So I was gutted about that, but I knew it was the right decision. And I'd had some fantastic winter conditions up to this point as well. So I said, right, okay, you know what? I can see Carmel Derrick at this point. The sun's coming out. I was like, oh, well, that's the only Munro I'm going to get an opportunity to hit today, and I'm going to kick myself if I don't push on and get that. So I sucked it up. I pushed on and came down off Carmel Derrick and headed up Carmel Derrick. And I got some photos looking back on Carmel Derrick and looking up as I was travelling up Carmel Derrick, and some photos at the top of CMD. And you can see from the photos, the sun's shining. It's a beautiful day at that point. I mean, I still couldn't see Ben Nevis. The visibility over that side wasn't great still, but the sun was out where I was. It was beautiful. It was starting to warm up, and the view of those two peaks was just stunning. I got some phenomenal photos, and you would be forgiven. Looking at those photos, you would be forgiven for thinking I was up Everest or somewhere crazy like that. I mean, the photos, they were just stunning, and it was amazing being up there. So it was just so serene and beautiful, so wild, so natural, so powerful, being in the jaws of nature like that. And so I headed up Carmel Derrick and hit the summit of Carmel Derrick, 1,220 meters. So this now is the highest I've ever climbed any mountain, 1,220 meters. I spent a few minutes there, just had some food, took some water on, took some photos. I mean, I couldn't really see, I could just see the start of the Arête. So again, the visibility was only kind of clear in that one patch, but the Arête, I couldn't see the full Arête at all, just the very start through the clouds, through the mist. Got a few pictures of that. Had a pang in my heart that I wasn't going to get to, because it just looked so amazing and so wintry and so snowy, and I was like, this is everything I came up for. I wanted to do the Arête, and I wanted to do it in snow and ice and shit. And but I knew the sensible thing to do was to turn around. So I turned around, and this was where I first had a little bit of a panic, because my other phone, which I usually take out with me, it lost all of its charge overnight, which I think was to do with the cold. So I hadn't bought it. When I was taking all the photos on my iPhone that I had my maps on, I had a paper map as well and compass, so I had both. But I was using the iPhone as my main source of navigation, using the OS maps, and the phone died. It had like 50% battery, and I was taking some snaps at Carmel Derrick, and then it just died. Tried to turn it back on, and it was dead. I was like, fuck. So this was the first kind of turning point in the day for me, where something had kind of gone wrong. It wasn't that bad. The weather was clearing. I could see the route now that I needed to take. I knew the route. I knew that I was basically following this ridge line now back to Carmel Derrick. And then down there, and I knew what the bearing was off there, so I wasn't too concerned, but it was like, shit. So the plan kind of hadn't gone to plan. I didn't have my phone for navigation, but I had my map, had my compass, so I was like, okay. So in my mind, I panicked a little bit, and I got a bit scared. I was like, oh shit, I'll have to use my map and compass now. Okay, that's a bit more of a pain in the ass than just whipping the phone out to have a look. So I was like, okay, right, let's it's okay, because I know where I'm going. I can see the route. I know how to get down off Carmel Derrick. I know how to get to Carmel Derrick and how to get down from there, and how to get back to the path. Weather was clearing, so I was like, right, be logical about this. We're cool. So I was just like, right, let's turn around, let's get back down now, and make some good progress. So I'm still fully cramponed, ice axe. It's full winter. I mean, it's basically ice slab up there. I couldn't have done it without all of that equipment. So I head back down along now. I don't go back up to the Carn Deag Madonag summit. I just kind of followed the contour line down. So came down from Carn Deag and followed the contour line, then across back along to Carn Deag. Made very good time. Got back to, so I hit the Carn Deag summit on the way back down as well. So I went up to that. So I got the 3 summits in. And then from there, I picked my route down in order to get me back down to the path. Now, if you look at the map, that's still quite a slog. That's a long way. You know, that whole distance from Carn Deag to Carn Deag, I had to do about the same again, but downhill across that terrain to get back to the path that ran along the Alt a Muhallian, which I butchered again, sorry. And depending on the route that you take down, it's a longer route to take a shallower route, but then the shorter route is a bit more steep. Now, the visibility was okay, but obviously coming down, you can only see so much of what's below you, depending on how the terrain sits. And so I'm heading down. I hit the summit of Carn Deag, and everything's going well. Now, up there are lots of rock fields. So there was some drifts, so there was quite deep snow. There was a lot of ice sheet patches. So it was necessary to keep the crampons on and the ice axe out. But at the same time, it was tricky coming down off Carn Deag because of all the rocks that were poking up through the ice and the snow as well. Now, I couldn't have done it without the crampons because there was so much ice up there. But at the same time, then the crampons were sometimes hitting on the rock. And as they were protruding, it made for an unstable footing sometimes. And so I'm making my way down and across and heading kind of basically now I've got a beeline straight down to the path. I can see the path down below. So visibility's good, weather's okay. And I'm making my way across the snow, the ice, and these rock fields. And I'm up at about... I've said before I was probably about 800 meters, but I think actually I was probably somewhere between 900 and 950. And I'm heading across this snow patch, and all of a sudden my crampon on the one foot just caught on a rock in a funny kind of way, and I lost my footing. And this was where things really took a turn for the worse. And as I fell, so I proper fell. It was a relatively flat section of mountain, so I didn't fall down the mountain or anything. You know, I didn't slide or go down a slope. I just lost my footing and fell. And I don't know how it happened. I don't know how it turned in the way that it did. But as I went down, I caught myself with my left hand on a rock. And my right hand went straight into my ice axe, the pick on my ice axe, and it didn't go all the way through my hand, but it went straight through both of my gloves and straight into my hand. Probably about as far into my hand as it could have gone without going all the way through. So it was a significant gash. It was a significant hole. It was painful. And at that moment, I just thought, fuck. And that's pretty much all I said. Was fuck. Because I know I'd fucked up. So, straight away in that instance, it could have gone one of two ways. I could have panicked and just lost my shit, and I may have died up there. Or I could keep my cool and go straight into logic. So now shit just got real. And so I started just ticking stuff off in my mind. So I was like, right, okay, I'm not getting any help because my phone's dead. I literally cannot call anybody for any help. I can't call MRT. I can't call family. I can't do shit. I'm not getting help. So I'm going to have to get myself out of this. I've got my 3 kids at home. My partner's pregnant. My fiance, my mum and dad, everybody really wanting to see me again. And it's like, I need to get myself out of this. Now, look, I wasn't like dying. I it was my hand, for fuck's sake. So I'm not trying to make this more than it was. But when you're 900 meters up a mountain and you're fucked from the day anyway, it's to have an accident like that and to penetrate your hand with your ice axe was some serious fucking shit for me. And I was very aware that if I'd have landed differently, if I'd have fallen slightly differently, maybe that ice axe would have gone through my chest. Maybe it would have gone through my stomach. I don't know. It didn't, but it could have if I'd have. I fucking let go of the fucking thing, which was a rookie move. I don't know how that happened. You know, as I lost my footing and fell, I've obviously just released it, and then as I've come down, it's my hands landed on it. But nonetheless, I was where I was. No phone and no help. So the only person who was going to help me was me. So it was either give up and die, or get my shit together and do what I needed to do to get down. And in order to do what I needed to do, I had to figure out what the fuck that was, right? So I've got this wound in my hand. So first things first, am I going to bleed out? Has it penetrated any major veins or arteries? How much blood is there? So I'm looking at it now and I'm like, right, okay, how much blood is coming out of this wound? Wasn't really bleeding all that much. So I'm like, right, okay. So I'm looking at it over a few minutes and I'm like, right, get these crampons off now, because I can't keep them on, and I've got to get them off now because I'm not going to be able to do it once I bandage my hand up. So I got my first thing I did was bandage my hand up. So I got my first aid kit. So I'm doing everything one-handed now. Sat in the snow. The weather was okay at this point, so that was a plus. Got my first aid kit out of my bag and got the dressing out of there. So I got the dressing, wrapped it around my hand nice and tight, stop any blood flow that there might have been. Got the pad on the wound and then wrapped it around my fingers and my thumb and my hand so it was going to stay as clean as possible and to stop any blood flow. It wasn't bleeding that much at all, so I wasn't too worried in terms of bleeding out. I knew at that point I wasn't going to bleed out, so I was very lucky it didn't hit any major veins or arteries. So I got it bandaged up, and then I got my crampons off and got my ice axe in my bag. Because at this point, I'm averse to my ice axe, although it would have been sensible to use it on the way down. But I had one hand, and I needed that hand in order to traverse the terrain and help me and keep this other one free because it was so painful. And then I could see the path down below, so I was basically right, shortest route. Pick obviously the terrain that makes the most sense in terms of a route to get down and just get straight down to that path. Once I get to the path, get back along the path, because once I was at the path I was going to be okay. At the moment I'm 900 meters up in the sky, up this mountain in winter conditions, and it's getting late. It's like 3:30 in the afternoon. But I knew, right, if I can get down to that path, then it's just a case of walking along that path, getting back down through the forest in my car and get to A&E so I can get this patched up. So I started heading down the mountain. I got everything back in my bag, got it back on my back. My hand's now dressed and bandaged up. And I just went into get shit done mode. There was no emotion. There was no panic. There was no... Even the pain kind of went away at this point. It was just adrenaline overload. I was just like, right, I need to get home to my family. I need to get to A&E. This is what needs to happen. I need to get to the path, get to the car, get to A&E, get home. Boom. That was it. And that's all I was focused on. It was massive tunnel vision. And so that's what I did. It was just, I kept saying to myself, and it was fucking hard. I was knackered. My hand hurt. My legs hurt. Everything hurt. And it was a real tough slog down. And it was such a long way. And I just kept, I just need to get to the path. Come on, bitch. Get to the path. Come on, man. Just fucking suck it up and get down. Get down. Get down. And I was going down and then slid on my ass a little bit. I thought, okay, well, that might be a quicker way to get down. Quickly realised that was a fucking bad idea. It was like, started sliding, picking up speed. Oh shit, if I keep sliding, I'm not going to fucking stop. So I was kind of sliding on my ass for like small sections and then braking with my feet. Just doing whatever I could to get down and kind of avoid some of the big rocks and drops and stuff. Anyway, I got down and and then got down to the path, and I was like, okay, so that was the first milestone. I was like, right, I'm going to be okay. And then walked all the way along the path, got down through the forest. I'm holding my hand up in the air so that the blood's not collecting in the limb. Past a couple of people who must have thought I was weird as fuck, and like, what the hell is this guy doing? And got back to the car. And then I got back to the car, put my phone on charge, got my bag off, sat in the car seat, and just burst into tears. Just went into shock. Phoned my fiance, told her what had happened, and she was all worried, and found the A&E in Fort William, and kind of sent me the details for that, so I didn't really have to think about it. And just went into shock, just started trembling, and like, because up to that point the adrenaline just taken over. It was like I had a job to get done. I needed to get where I needed to get in order to get home and get safe. And up until that point, there was no room for any emotion. There was no room for any shock. It was just like, I need to do this, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get it done. And when I got to the car, it just all hit me. I was a bit of a mess. Couldn't even drive. I was just so upset. It could have been so much worse, and all this stuff racing through my mind. So I knew that sugar was something that would help, so I got some sugar down me. That helped calm me down, had a drink, had some water, and kind of got my wits about me. And whilst she was on the phone, she was talking to me and keeping me focused while I drove to the A&E. Got to A&E, and was still in a bit of shock, and kind of booked myself in, waited for 15-20 minutes, and then was seen. And I have to say, the staff at Fort William A&E were absolutely phenomenal. They were amazing. They did everything. They cleaned it up. They x-rayed it to make sure it hadn't damaged any tendons or bones, and then they got me patched up, sewn up. Had one stitch, luckily, so it wasn't a huge amount of stitches. I'm a fucking fanny when it comes to that's probably a not very PC way of saying it. I'm a wuss when it comes to needles. I hate them. I really hate them. That's another story for another day. So that was probably more painful for me than the axe going through my hand, which is a bit crazy. But yeah, I was there for a good couple of hours. I left there about 7:30, and by that point, I was feeling okay. Hand was throbbing. It was really, really painful. But I didn't have any painkillers. I chose not to have any painkillers. Didn't need any antibiotics, but they dressed it, patched it up, dressed it, and I was on my way at 7:30. And then I had a massive drive. It was like it's just a huge drive. I can't even think, like 10 hours, 12 hours, something ridiculous. So I drove till 12:30 in the morning, that next morning. Drove for like 5 hours. Stopped in Dumfries, got a Premier Inn overnight, and then finished the rest of my journey in the morning. And I've got a massive scar on my hand now. I mean, this was weeks and weeks and weeks ago. It's still swollen, so there's still a lump there, and it still hurts when I grip things in a certain way. But it again was an amazing day out, even with the accident that happened at the end. I mean, it's taught me more about myself, how I react in times of stress when my chips are down, when my back's up against the wall. I know now that I come through, and I do what needs to be done, and I'm the leader for myself as well as for others. And it's about being aware of the emotions, being aware of the shit that's gnawing you in your mind, but not letting it control you. You make your decisions, so it's just another piece of information. The fear, the anxiety, it's just another piece of information. And you use it to inspire you, you use it to drive you, but you don't let it control you, because if you let it control you, you die. In that situation, I would have died. I'll definitely be taking an extra phone and a charging pack out with me next time I go as well. That would be key. And next time, I would probably do more to avoid the rocks, because that was what tripped me up, quite literally. So I would definitely have picked a different route next time. But there will be a next time. It's not put me off getting up in the mountains. It's not put me off going out alone. It's not put me off going out in those kind of conditions. Every day is a learning day. And look, loads of people do die from mountaineering. Loads of people, it's a very dangerous pastime, activity, sport, whatever you want to call it. It's real. And when you see these people who go out in conditions like that, or up mountain ranges like there are in Scotland, and they're wearing fucking trainers, and they don't have any food, they don't have a map and compass, and if they did, they wouldn't know how to use it. It's fucking insane, man. Like those mountains, those hills, that wilderness is unforgiving. It will fuck you up if you don't go prepared, and if you're stupid, and if you make bad calls. Don't be one of those people, because you're not just putting yourself at risk, you're putting the lives of those who have to come out and save you at risk as well, those MRT members. It was amazing how many doctors at the hospital were actually members of the local mountain rescue. Yeah, just crazy. But yeah, great people. So that was my experience up the mountains on that day, and that really kind of concludes this episode. I hope it's been interesting and educational for you, hearing the story and learning my lessons through me vicariously in terms of what I experienced and how I made the decisions that I made, why I made those decisions, and my thought processes, and what I did, and the version of myself I stepped into when shit hit the fan and bad things happened. And I hope it inspires you to be adventurous and to try things and to take some risks, but to be calculated. You know, whether those risks are in life or in business, think ahead, plan the situations that might happen, all of them, before they actually do. Visualize, know what your plan would be in every eventuality for a given outcome. That's really, really powerful. And when the shit hits the fan, be aware of those emotions that drive you, that are powerful, the fear, the anxiety, the frustration, but don't let them drive you. Use them, be aware of them, know who they are, where they are, and use them to inspire you, to add meaning and urgency, but control your own decision-making process. Make sure you balance that with the facts of the situation, logic, so that you can do what needs to be done to get you where you need to go. And that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Until next time, stay optimized.